Hey Mark, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Good, Matt. How are you?
We're back for another round. I'm excited, and I think we got some great information this time.
Yeah, welcome to our listeners. Welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as your money, and we understand that, and we want to bring some quality education to you as always. So, good to see you again.
Great to see you, man. It's weird. We've been posting our stuff online, and it's almost like I'm getting some great feedback. People are getting in touch with me like, hey, I'm subscribed, I'm checking it out, you got some really great stuff. And I feel like we're really helping people understand what's going on.
We had a couple suggestions which brought up today's topic.
Yep.
Some of our listeners, they're retired. Some of them are grandparents. Some of them are seniors. Some of them are getting ready to retire.
Sure.
And they ask that we start doing some formats also, in addition to the ones that they're enjoying now, of investment basics. So that perhaps their grandchildren or their great-grandchildren can listen and learn a little bit about, start developing investment knowledge. And I think that's a good idea. So today we're going to cover a lot of those basic topics.
Yeah, and sometimes, as guys that do this every day, we kind of take for granted the basics, and we think like everyone knows it already. And in a lot of cases that happens where you start talking to somebody and you assume they know what a mutual fund is, or what a security is, or what a bond is, or, and how they work. So there's a certain level of information you should know, kind of to make you dangerous, right? But not too much to the point where because there is like overdoing it, and going too deep down the ladder.
Yeah, and as always, we don't want to be so technical that a client is more confused when they leave than when they came in.
Right. Like, here are some basics. So, all right, cool.
Yeah, so let's get into it. It's your time.
Your money. I'll flip it this time around. Hopefully I don't break it with my big banana hands here.
All right. Well, I think that the start of the conversation has to be about investing in general, psychology on investing. And investing should be a long-term approach. Let's get that out in the open. The majority of what we talk about in the investment world has some type of risk associated with it.
Of course.
But time is the equalizer in most cases on investing.
Sure.
Right? Everything has fluctuation, up and down, up and down. And we want to make sure that investors understand that investments going into the portfolio need to have a long-term horizon in most cases. Yeah.
I mean, and it's not the same for everybody, because there's people that we work with that are in their 70s that they don't have a very long horizon. It's only 10 years. But, the truth is that as you look at the portfolio as a whole, imagine you're looking through a telescope at Saturn or the moon, right? You're trying to see things that are going to happen 15, 20, 30 years in the future. So you can't watch the market today and freak out and lose your mind on something,
Yeah, and if you have a long-term horizon, you're more apt to make the right decisions and not an emotional fear one. It always comes back to fear, and fear is a short-term emotion.
Sure.
Right? It's, hey, this investment went down, and it's, oh my goodness, I need to get out of it, versus what do I do when it goes down? So, first and foremost, it's a long-term strategy. Ultimately, when you're investing, you should not be putting money in and pulling it out if it has risks. And in some cases it's called money laundering, which is one of the things that investors don't want to do is put money in, take it out, regardless of loss, regardless of gain or anything along that line. So, so that's important. The other thing to understand with investments is the word correlated. And a lot of times, even the basic or even the savvy investors don't understand correlation. And correlation is just how do investments act against other investments in a portfolio.
Well, I mean, you're saying a very important word, and in the really technical sense, it's called beta, right? The correlation that when something happens, there's a reaction in the market, and sometimes I think clients, they look past that, or just a general investor looks past what really is happening behind the scenes. And I think a great example might be interest rates, right? What happens when interest rates go up?
Yeah,
I think that's a great starting point.
Yeah, and correlation. Having non-correlated asset, the easiest mental picture somebody can understand is a seesaw.
Sure.
Right? If something's going down, you want to have something on the other side of the seesaw.
Yep.
Right? If you keep piling everything on one side of the seesaw, what's going to happen? Right? You're not going to get any movement up.
Right. One side's going to be stuck in the air. The other side's stuck on the ground,
Yeah. And the problem is we're at a period of time, which we'll get into a little bit later when we start talking about the difference of stocks and bonds, but we're at a period of time where both those sides of the seesaw are fairly up right now.
Right.
And we've haven't been in that period of time in, I don't know, the last 40, 50 years. So, it's important to have non-correlated assets that act opposite or different in a portfolio to bring some stability in.
You're talking about really important stuff here. And I feel like as people are listening, I hope they're getting a feel for how we practice, right? And how we try to make sure things are set up, right? Making sure that there's income streams and making sure that there's different types of income from those income streams. You're literally hitting on all the best stuff. So I want to keep going. I don't want to delve off here, but it's important, diversification is a really important part of investment basics.
Yes. Very much so. And the majority of tools that people use to get to their goals, whether it's long-term retirement or later on 20, 30-year goal of purchasing a home or whatever it is, down college planning, stuff like that, is in the stock world.
Sure.
And the common mistake that investors make is they confuse the word the market
right
with every investment they have in their portfolio.
Everything, right.
Well, the market went down. My common response is, well, which market are you talking about? Mm-hmm. Right? Because there's stocks that trade on the stock market, there's bonds that trade on them.
There's the S&P, there's the NASDAQ, there's the Dow 30, there's the Dow 100, there's the Russell, you know what I mean?
There's all these complicated terminologies which break out different types of stocks or different types of bonds. And, just making the blanket statement that the market's down,
right.
It leads me to believe that most people don't understand their investments to begin with.
Well, I think a funny question you might ask somebody, right? What is your 401k? What's in your 401k? Or do you have a 401k, right?
Yep, common response. Stocks and bonds. Stocks.
No, even better. Let's go one further, right? Do you have a 401k, Mark?
I think so.
I think so, right? What's in it? Well, my 401k.
Yeah.
And that's a very common response. And then you look at it and it's either in like a target date fund, right? Which is a mutual fund based portfolio, or it's in a fixed account, right? And it's never been tended to. It's never been looked at before.
Yeah. And a lot of times the same connotation is with an IRA or a Roth.
Right.
Hey, I need to do another Roth this year, right? And when you understand what those things are, it's important. So think of each terminology, traditional IRA, Roth IRA,
yep.
401k, 403b. 403b is for nonprofit usually, 401k for profit companies. All those terms are just the empty pot, so to speak,
on where the
that
dollars
investments go into.
Exactly.
Right? So people say, oh, well, I have a CD Roth at the bank, or I have a Roth at the bank and it's a CD.
Sure.
Right? Well, you have a Roth at the bank, and in the Roth is the CD.
Yep.
The CD is not the Roth, for instance, in that case. So once you understand that, then the investment world opens up a little bit, because then you can start saying, well, what's in my pot?
Right. How many CDs do I have? Or is everything fixed? Again, like that's a great narrative you drew with the seesaw. So if your 401k is all stable, right, and then you have all CDs at the bank, well, guess what? You're not very well diversified, right? Yeah. But if you're 86 years old, well, then maybe that's okay based on when you think you're going to need the money.
Correct.
Because every situation is different.
Yeah. So, let's start transitioning towards the investments in those pots, so to speak. And the other thing that we hear a lot of times is I have stock in my 401k.
Sure.
And when we look at it, it's technically got stocks in it, but it's mutual funds.
Right.
Right. And there's a difference between the two.
Yep.
So I think it's important that listeners understand, stocks are ownership in a company.
Right. I am an owner. I have one share of Google. I have one share of Amazon, right? I own that company, one share of it.
Yep. And as an owner, you're participating in the growth or loss as that company goes through its life cycle.
Sure.
Right. So that company may have dividends. That company may have, a loss for the year and the stock price goes down.
Yep.
And in stocks, when you own a share, you're betting that one company only is going to provide return for you.
Correct. It's going to go up.
Yes. On the other side, most people don't realize in that same company, you can own a bond of the same company.
Sure.
Most people think bond, they think government or EE.
I got a H bond, right?
H bond, something along that lines, right? But they don't realize that you can actually loan a company money. How, when companies grow, they want to get assets in. So they'll maybe release bonds. People are lending them money with a promise of them to pay more later down the road.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Now, the nice thing about the bond is you get interest off of it. Right? So unlike stock where there's ownership and you participate in growth of the company, in a bond, because you're the lender, like a bank, so to speak.
You're giving the company the money.
They're promising you some type of interest payment back.
Sure.
It's not guaranteed because if the company collapses, how are they going to pay you back?
Right.
But it's designed to offer maybe an income option for people because it pays monthly or quarterly dividend, which is a little bit more easy to live off of than, say, a stock, which may not pay a dividend at all.
And it's potentially less risky, depending on the type of the bond that you're buying.
Yeah, in the general sense of the term, if you think about it, if a company were to collapse and go under, right, they have tangible assets usually. Right. Vehicles, desks,
Equipment,
things like that, right?
Right.
Those are things, they go through an auction site, whatever it is. I'm just using a layman's terms, right?
Right.
Well, the first person to get paid in any bankruptcy or anything like that is usually the first lender. Right. If you went bankrupt, your mortgage company is your first lender.
Right. They get your house.
They're going to get your house, right?
They try to sell all your stuff to get paid back.
If a plumber has a lien against your house, he's probably not going to get the house because the mortgage company is going to take it first, right? So in the corporate world, if a company were to collapse or fold or whatever, however you want to use the terminology, the bondholders are kind of the primary lender, right? In simplistic terms. So there's usually so many bondholders, the stockholders are left holding the bag, and that's where you see the loss on the stock side. So you have two different dynamics in the same investment of a company. So no matter what the company is, it allows some opportunity on that seesaw, so to speak, that we talked about, for even diversification within the same company.
And I think a lot of listeners right now are hearing you, and they might be like really just like not understanding what you're saying. But the truth is, is that I can own a stock or I can own a bond, and it could be in the same company.
Exactly.
It just has different purposes, different goals.
Exactly. So with that being said, imagine you had $1,000 to invest.
Okay.
And you wanted to go and buy a company that was, let's say, on the market today at $900 a share.
Sure.
Right? You're going to buy one full share.
Right.
And a fraction of another share.
Right. So I got 1.1 shares.
Now, every time that stock goes up $1, what do you make?
Make a buck. $1.10.
Right. So how much does that stock have to move to make $1,000? A lot, right?
Significantly. I think it's important. Market cap is a big part of this, right? So if this company is already worth $1 billion, it's got to get to $2 billion essentially for the stock to really go up a lot.
Yeah. So the average investor can't take $1,000 or $100, and buy 100 companies individually,
right?
Or 100 bonds in those companies individually because they don't have enough money.
Yep.
So the market came up with another vehicle and a pot, so to speak. And in that pot, they put hundreds, in some case, of companies.
Right.
And it's called a mutual fund. It's a pool of investments that when you add $10 or $50, it gets spread out between all the companies in that pot, so to speak.
I'll do the grocery store analogy here where people learn about mutual funds for the first time. You're walking down the cereal aisle. You can either buy the Lucky Charms, which is your only box, or you can buy all the boxes of cereal, but you only get a little bit. You're going to get a little tiny bit of each one. That's the narrative between a stock, which is the Lucky Charms, or the mutual fund, which is the entire aisle.
Yeah, so let's think about that in common sense terms, right? In the first scenario, you bought one company.
Right. I bought the box. I have the box. There it is. I got it.
And that box breaks.
Oh, boy.
Right? It's all over the floor. It's no good anymore.
Oh, man.
It's called, a company went under.
They exploded, right.
What happens to your money? It's gone.
Right.
Right? And that's the fear. People, I'm in the stock market, right? Now, take that same concept that you did, and you have 100 different boxes of cereal.
Sure.
And one box breaks.
But I got 99 more.
But you have 99 more. That's why a lot of people need to understand mutual funds.
Sure.
And how they diversify you. Because in order for all your money to go to zero, and let's say you're in a fund that has 500 of the biggest companies in the world.
Sure, right.
Right? What has to happen literally to all 500 of those companies
Well, sometimes it's you kind of make a joke about it. Like, if the market could crash, right? Yes, but then the $1,000 that you put in is probably the least of our concerns. Because we're going to be hunting with sticks and spears again, like it's 20,000 years ago.
Yeah.
You know.
So the mutual funds allow the average investor to take $1 or 100,000 and spread it out instead of buying the individual security themselves. Sure. And same thing in a bond mutual fund, right? You're spreading it out between different bonds.
Different types of bonds,
right?
Got it.
Now, the general classes of mutual funds, I think, are important to understand.
Sure.
Because this is where it gets down to the important part of diversification in a 401k or in an IRA to make sure that assets aren't all on the same side of the seesaw. Right. So let's just talk stock mutual fund. We'll slow it down a little bit. We'll talk stock mutual fund. We'll get into that in a second.
Okay.
Right now we're going to head into community spotlight time.
Oh, it's my favorite time of the show.
Oh, it's this is the time where we highlight a business. We bring some attention to some good things going on in local businesses, and today we've got a great one. Toad Stereo, right? Okay. Toad, yes, Toad Stereo. The owner's name is Todd. He actually goes by Toad sometime, but Toad Stereo down at 893 on Main Street in Cairo, New York, 12413. Phone number 518-622-9772. He started as a car audio shop.
Okay.
But in a small town, what do you have to do? Just like a mutual fund, you got to diversify. You got to diversify. I tell you what, this guy and his team, they do so much stuff down there. They do car audio. They do dirt bike, ATV repair. They sell apparel.
You love your dirt bikes, man.
They do car starters. If winter's coming or summer's coming, you want air conditioning to kick on automatically. They install car starters. They work with a lot of auto dealers actually doing their installs. So when you order that option on a car, he goes to the dealership and installs it. You would never know. Such professional quality. In the winter, he does plows. He does plow maintenance. You name it, he does it down there. Toad Stereo, 893 Main Street, Cairo, New York, 518-622-9772. Shout out to Toad. Or Todd Jones, the owner down there, and great business. So.
You love your dirt bikes, and that's I'll let our viewers kind of in on a little secret. Mark's actually a phenomenal dirt bike rider. I know you've done it for a long time, and I'm scared to death of motorcycles. Just FYI. So yeah, I'd never get on. I got on a motorcycle one time in California with my brother. And that was enough for me. I was like, okay, I've got my one experience. I'm out. I don't want to do it again.
Be afraid of the motorcycle, just the tree in your way,
it's the tree
or the ground that you hit, which are the main things.
God.
Let's get back on the topic with mutual funds. And as I had alluded to earlier, let's just explain the different classes of mutual funds. And we'll start on the stock side. Okay. So a common terminology you'll hear is large cap, mid cap, small cap. Right, cap is short for capitalization.
World cap, right?
Exactly. And from an investment basic standpoint, the average investor can look at the name of a fund that says large, mid, and small and understand that is related to the size of the company you're investing in.
Got it.
Just very common term, right? Another word for large cap sometimes is blue chip.
Blue chip, yeah.
Right? Weird. Why would you call it a blue chip?
Comes
from poker. Used to be the biggest company.
The biggest chip in the poker room.
You know what I mean? So right away, even if the investor doesn't have a lot of knowledge and they just take the stuff they learned from this podcast and go into their 401k, they can kind of look at the names of the funds and see what they're invested in.
Right.
So a large cap company would be something like
Coca-Cola, right? Yeah. Amazon.
Walmart,
right?
Home Depot, right? Anything that you know.
You walk past it, you know it right away. McDonald's.
Or probably, if you don't know it, you know the product they make.
Correct.
Right? Then you have the mid-cap space. And think of it like this. If a company is very large, it's harder for them usually to go out of business.
It's difficult. I mean, it happens. I mean, what was it? Kmart went out of business, right?
Yeah, it happens.
They were a large cap company.
If Walmart goes out, we're all in trouble.
Oh, man. But here's the great thing about capitalism is that something else will pop up in its place.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And to that point, just on a side note, that's why the market keeps growing, right? Because there's
innovation.
There's more companies coming in than are failing that have already made it to the top.
Correct.
Right? There's more new companies coming in than Walmart's folding.
Yep.
Right? And that's how our economy's always been.
Yeah.
Right? So the great thing about it is you can go into a mid-cap company which can grow and become a large cap.
Got it.
Or a mega cap, right? You hear mega cap nowadays, right? Companies over a certain size. So the smaller the companies you go to, the more opportunity you have on growth.
Right.
Right? But you also have more what?
You have more risk.
Right?
More downside.
Yeah, because they don't have as much, capital. They don't have as much client, loyalty or whatever.
Maybe their infrastructure isn't as big. Maybe they don't have the best shipping scenarios, right?
Exactly. Then you have small cap, right?
Yep.
And then you have, some branches out from domestic to international.
Right.
Right. So international, maybe like Henkel knives out of Germany, Lindt chocolate, those types of things.
I think the first mistake you got to make sure you talk about, Mark, is that when you look at these portfolios, a lot of the time, people's portfolios in their 401ks, they're very heavily weighted in the U.S. And that's the first thing I see. I look at it. It's usually either a target date, it's fixed, or it's heavy in the U.S., right? Like 80, 90%. Yeah. And that means that if our economy is struggling, if something happens to the dollar, or if oil gets more expensive, or if there's a crisis, you're going to feel a bigger hit. Whereas if you had some of that money overseas, if you had some of that money internationally.
Yep.
Right.
And for you investment gurus that are listening, listen, we know there's a million other names to funds out there, new, emerging markets, things along those lines. But for the average investor, they just need to understand the size of the company and the risk associated with it that they're in.
I'm going to give a plug to Yahoo Finance. Not that, I mean, we may get nixed on it, but Yahoo Finance is a great app. I can go into Yahoo Finance and I can type in a ticker symbol, and there's a lot of other apps, but I just like it because I've had it forever. You type in the ticker symbol of American Funds or Fidelity or Franklin, and it'll come up, and then you can look at the history. What's its Morningstar rating? What's its internal expense ratio? How much does it cost to buy?
Now we're getting past investment basics, Matt. So
we are, but I think education is critical here. Not only because there's a process for every investor, man. If I got $1,000, I'm going to give that $1,000 to either my broker or a company, and I got to know who I'm investing with. And what's the best way to know is to actually go and find the information.
Exactly. And one of the things I think we do phenomenal as a group is when an investor comes in, we really take an effort to learn what education level they're at when it comes to investing, I think, and be as technical or as simple as we need to be for a client.
Not only do people need to know about this, but they need to know how to be a good client. How much education should I be asking for?
Exactly.
Right?
And our goal is always when a client comes in that we provide more education to them.
Right.
Right. We do not want to be having the same simplistic conversation with them every time we meet with them. We want that knowledge level progressing for a client.
Sure.
Because the more comfortable you are.
That's part of investment basics, like the getting comfortable having that conversation rather than saying, hey, here's all my stuff, figure it out. Like it's got to be a conversation.
Yep. And in the bond side, getting back to the topic we were at, in the bond side, there's a blend of all those different things.
Sure.
You can find multi-cap. Well, common sense says multi-cap does what?
I get all the different capitalizations, small, big, and large.
Exactly. Or sometimes you'll hear or see something called the SMID cap. Right? Small and medium, right? So those are just some common sense things that investors can take away when go in, maybe in their portfolio, look a little bit. Obviously, nothing beats a full X-ray, Morningstar report, things along that lines that we do on the technical end. But from an investment basic standpoint, very good. Let's talk about the bond side now, right?
Okay.
So bonds, we have a similar situation in the bonds, right? We talked about companies being able to offer bonds. But on the bond side, you have different types of bonds. You have, obviously, government bonds.
Sure.
You have corporate bonds like we talked about. And then you have a bond that kind of has a negative connotation to it because of the name. It's called a junk bond.
Oh my God, I don't want to buy that. It's junk. Oh,
right? Who wants to buy junk?
Run for the hills.
right. And what that terminology refers to is a high yield bond or a bond that has a lower credit quality.
Right, because there's a rating system.
Yeah, so just bonds. Like you're thinking in the stock world, large, mid, or small, you can kind of translate that a little bit to the bond market.
Yes, there's some really good ones that have a great credit rating, and then there's not so good.
What's the largest thing out there for a bond? Government.
Government bond, because if they default, we're in big trouble.
Exactly. And then in the investment grade bond or the corporate bond world, same thing, large, mid, small.
Sure.
Right?
Because a larger cap company is going to have more cash flow. They're going to have better mechanics. They potentially would be able to pay the bond at a better rate or for a longer period.
Correct.
Without defaulting.
Yep. And what junk bonds are, is there a smaller company in some cases or a lower credit quality company?
So let's say me and you start a company and it's literally a fresh company. We need a surge of capital.
There's risk.
Right? To get our company off the ground. We make pens. They're really amazing and we can sell them, right? So we need to ask investors, hey, we need you to take on some of that risk with us.
And an investor is going to say, we will do it, but instead of 3%, we're going to charge you 7%.
Yep. And then we're okay. Thank you for that capital.
Because there's more risk.
Here's your payback, but a company is still ours.
Correct. Because you're lower credit quality.
Correct.
So we have risk. We're going to adjust the interest to the risk accordingly.
Sure.
Right. In that bond classification, though, there are also municipal bonds.
Right. Muni bonds.
And that's very important to understand that states, part of the government, or state-run organizations,
sure,
school districts, thruway associations, port authorities will issue a bond as well.
Right.
Generally considered revenue bonds in most cases because they're tied to a direct source. Yep. For instance, you loan money to your local school. They have a source of income. It's called what?
Taxpayer dollars.
Yes.
Yes.
So if they get in trouble and need help paying you, what can they always do?
Hey, we need to raise taxes, guys.
Yes, everybody loves that, right? So that's tied to a source of revenue specifically for the municipal.
Right.
The nice thing about municipals, treated a little bit different than bonds.
For tax purposes.
Is municipals are not traditionally federally taxable. And in most cases, if you live in the state that you own the bond from, and there's state taxes, that bond would also, in most cases, be exempt from state taxes.
State and local.
And in, for instance, New York, some of them can be triple tax-free because if you lived in Yonkers, say, where there's a city tax, they're exempt from the city tax as well.
So we could take our dollars and put them into a muni bond, right? And we can generate income that's tax exempt.
Yeah, because remember, a mutual fund being a pot of different investments is also a pass-through.
Right.
So as interest or earnings come into that mutual fund, it has to get passed through to the investor.
So if
capital
I'm going to
gains, dividend, whatever it might be.
And I think that's important because as we start talking about the fundamentals, as we start to grow into the portfolio and the trust planning and all that other stuff, if we have a concept of understanding, well, if I'm buying a stock, I am also on the hook for all the growth that stock gives me. I get cap gains, I get divs, now I got to get a 1099. And all of a sudden, my CPA is like, whoa, 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 you made an extra 10 grand last year. What happened? Or I take those dollars and I buy a muni bond, and now I get my income and I give it to my CPA, and he goes, hey, good job. Yep. All that money was tax-free, dude. Good work.
Yep. And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk in investment basics about risk, right? Most people understand the risk of a stock. Company collapses, company folds.
It's going to go down, right? I'm going to lose the money.
Right? Very few people understand the bond relationship to risk.
Sure.
Right? So let's keep it very simple. Matt, you go on and buy a bond for 3% today.
Okay.
You own that bond.
Got it. It's mine.
Tomorrow, new bonds are on the market, and you can buy them for 4%.
Oh, so I can get a new bond, but I can get more return.
So you have your 3% bond. The new bonds are 4%.
Got it.
Who wants to buy your bond if they can go buy a new one at 4%?
I'm selling at a discount.
Nobody. You have to lower the price of your bond.
Right.
Which increases the yield. I won't get too technical there. Yeah. But you have to lower the price of your bond, meaning your balance on your sheet has to go down.
Right.
Because the new interest rates were higher.
Correct.
So in layman's terms, as interest rates go up, bond values can go down.
The face of the bond goes down.
The face of the bond goes down. Doesn't mean your dividend's going to change.
My yield might go up.
Correct. So important to understand risk on both sides.
Sure.
Right.
So I could lose money in the bond market.
Yep.
I could lose money in the stock market.
So as interest rates go up, you can drive bond prices down. So going way back to the beginning of our conversation, we talked about a point of time that we're in where both sides of the seesaw are up.
Why? Because interest rates are historically low, which makes bond face values what? Very high.
Yep.
But the market's also very high. So
yeah.
I hope that people, when they're listening to us, when they turn on like the finance channel and they hear, people are running for the hills to fixed income, right? What does that mean? What does it actually physically mean? Well, they're saying that because they can't buy bonds and they can't buy stocks because if they're trying to be defensive, there's no way to do it because both are extremely high right now.
Yeah, and because investors don't have basic knowledge like this,
Right.
they always are almost like lemmings, I would say. And it's not a knock on investors. It's a knock on the education system.
Time out. Lincoln loves Grizzly and the Lemmings. It's a great show. It's a show for kids. The Lemmings. If you don't know what a lemming is and you have kids, watch Grizzly and the Lemmings. Sidebar. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I can't believe you said that. I almost just jumped out of my chair.
But it amazes me when you get into understanding the market, watching cash flows and how ironically cash flows move the opposite of where they should during economic turmoil.
Well, let's talk about 2008, right? The housing market crisis. Everything starts to drop. Well, if you watch, there's a great show on it. Oh, I can't remember the name of it right now, but it's phenomenal. And they talked about derivatives and how the market crashed, right? And the swaps and the mortgage defaults, right? But that was one of the most historic moments in time when the fixed income instruments, at the Wall Street level, there was almost no fixed income on Wall Street. Why? What did everyone do with their dollars? They pushed them into the market. They bought because the market was historically low because of the housing crisis. So I think that's a great point you made, man. It's very important to see cash flow.
Yeah, and also grouped into the mutual fund space or money market.
Let's go back a step for basics though, Mark. If I'm a normal investor, and I like the rule of 6 months, right? How much cash should I have in reserves and how much cash should I have working for me? If I'm an average guy, I make 50, 60 grand a year, how much cash do I really need in the bank? Okay, how much cash should I have? And I know it's a personalized question.
Yeah, you hear 3 to 6 months worth of bills, but let's say your bills are 15 grand a month.
Oh my God, that's I'm living way past my lifestyle then if I'm only making 50.
Or let's say you don't have any bills. Let's say you're younger.
No bills.
Right? So that concept of having money as an emergency fund, I think, is still very important.
Absolutely.
And the problem is the reason people get into most credit card debt or have trouble with finance in general is because they don't have the emergency fund.
Right. And they have to dip into something else.
Yeah. And part of investment basics is budgeting.
So go to Google Sheets, right? Google Sheets is a great way to budget. Fantastic. Here's my inflow. Here's my outflow. If it's a negative, you got to stop spending.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those listeners that are struggling with finance or those listeners that have credit card debt, I relate credit card debt to a fish bobber. Okay, think of it like this. You have $15,000, $20,000 of credit card debt and you're trying to pay it off, right? Okay. And you feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck. You're throwing extra money on the credit card debt. It goes down a little bit, and then just like a fish bobber, it pops back up when an emergency happens.
Yep. My car needs a transmission. My roof is a
leak.
Right,
and you feel like you can't get out of that cycle.
Yep.
And ironically, some of the best ways to get on a credit card debt, if there's always the refinancing of a home equity, stuff like that.
Balance transfer.
But in the budgetary world, some of the best ways to get on a debt is to save at the same time. Right. Now, picture your credit card debt in one bucket of money and your savings another bucket. And if you're saving at the same time you're paying it down, as your credit card debt goes down slower, the emergency comes, you take the money where? From the savings account now.
Yep.
So your savings might go back down to zero,
but you didn't put it all back on the credit card.
But you let the credit card be down a little bit more. And over 22 years, one of the only ways I can get people out of that rhythm is to make sure that they're saving at the same time.
See, that's the hard conversation, and that's where I'll make sure I really divulge as a practice. We want to try to avoid trying to change people's habits. And that's an honest statement for me. I met with a great couple last week, and they were buried, credit card debt, business debt. And I said, we can't start talking about retirement savings until you dig out of the hole from the debt. There's no way we can start to save in retirement planning. But on the emergency fund, yes, you have to build that up. Yeah. So you don't keep stubbing your toe on the same knot.
Yep, it's your buffer, it's your protection, so to speak. And emergencies happen. The point of having too much in savings. Usually I tell people if you've got $40,000 in savings, right? I'm just throwing a number out there. If a $40,000 emergency came up, chances are some type of insurance is going to kick in. Homeowners, auto,
I always go through this with anyone that I work with that's new. Okay, so tell me your 3 worst case scenarios, right? Usually it's I need a new car, my roof leaks, and I need an appliance. So I say, okay, write those numbers down. Now double that. That's your emergency fund, and normally it's around $30,000 to $35,000. But anything more than that, now you should start to think about, hey, do I buy a mutual fund? Do I buy a stock?
Is my money working?
Do I buy a bond? Because if inflation's 7%, right, and I have $100,000 in my savings account, Well, by the end of the month, how much do I really have?
7% less.
93,000. Yeah. And people don't realize that because my dollar can't buy as much, you know?
Yep.
So we had some great stuff there.
Yeah. So, you know, budgeting is one thing, and, you know, and motivation of investors is another thing. I think we do very well as a group. And that, I think, is just the genuine nature of us wanting to see a client succeed. Well, you know what I mean? Why would we want to work with a client if we don't want to see them get to their end of their goals?
Well, but you got to remember though, Mark, there's a lot of people out there that don't have this knowledge and they don't understand. Like, you know, you see the life insurance commercials all the time on TV. You see the, you know, the E-Trade commercials. There's nothing wrong with E-Trade. But if you're a first-time investor, going on to a commercial that you just got, like a website, and then just putting it in yourself and trying to do it yourself, again, try to imagine your car's breaking down. You going to go fix your transmission? You're going to go out and do that? You know, probably not.
Exactly. One quote I always say, and I quote it because it's from me, and I can only quote myself because I'll always remember it.
It's a quote from myself.
It's very simple. More is more. The more you put away, the more you will have at the end in retirement.
Sure.
And unfortunately, a lot of investors take what I call the lottery approach.
Okay.
How little can I put away on a scratch off, so to speak?
Right, $5, $10.
How much of a return can I get to retirement?
Sure.
Right. I tell a client, if you want to have $2 million at retirement, plan on putting $2 million away.
Got it.
My job as an advisor through return is to get you there by the time you put away $600,000 or $700,000.
And then we did a good job, right?
Then we did a good job.
Now we got there, right?
Yeah, but you know, just like we talk about in a medical profession, being your own advocate.
Sure.
Be your own advocate with your savings.
But that means to educate yourself. Right. Don't just work with the first person that comes along, right? And that's where we talk. I think the basics not only go to what you're talking about and what we're displaying with the market, but also the basics go with education. It's got to go with a feel and knowledge, right? I just had 2 people come in and they saw our podcast room and they're very new to this whole experience. So sometimes you got to go slow.
Yeah, just getting married in the next year, they said.
Right. You know, like everything is happening. Estate planning and initial investing. What do I do? How do we avoid this pitfall? Yep. You know? So I feel like it's on both sides, man, on the education and on the feel of who you're working with.
Yep. And, you know, our show is called Time is Money.
Right. Your time, your money.
Time is so valuable in investing. So for the beginning investor, and I'm talking to the millennials out there now, the 18-year-old, like I was 18 when I first started investing, you know, you have an incredible advantage on your, you know, based on your time.
The big C word.
You have compounded interest.
There it is, compounding.
Compounding over your lifetime. You know, if money were to double every 10 years at 7%.
Yep.
It's called the rule of 72. Money doubles at 7% every 10 years. Well, if you get an extra doubling in because you started at 18
instead of 28,
that could be the difference of $1 million at retirement versus 2
versus 4
versus 6
versus 8, right? It's huge.
You know what I mean? So it doesn't seem like a big difference between 18 and 28. And a lot of times you get, well, they're figuring things out.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're doing. You know what? If you're working, if you're a tipped employee, if you are, you know, at Walmart as a greeter or getting carts, you can save.
This is where the extra cappuccino or the extra lunch out with your friends, this is where if you make that choice, that $100 when you're 18 turns into millions when you're in your 60s. I'm 18,
I'm going to go buy the Subaru WRX all loaded.
Right.
Or I'm going to go get, you know what I mean, a used Ford Fusion.
Sure.
And make it last until I get into my career.
Sure.
Right? It's different.
It's a habit. Listen, there is, you can be frugal and smart. You don't have to be cheap, right? You can be frugal and smart with your money. And sometimes people confuse that. Oh, you're being cheap. You know, you're not paying your fair share. Or you never go to lunch with us. You never go out and get coffee with us. Well, yeah, but you know what? I'm also getting a 19% rate of return on my whatever fund I own. Yeah. You know, and that's a big difference.
Well, what I tell younger people, and this is a testament to you, Matt. You know, you've been in the NFL.
Listen,
and my point with that is it took you years, high school, training, late night practices, strength, conditioning, film, right? It's all technically called delayed gratification.
Sure.
Right? Michael Jordan, when he got to where he was making millions of dollars. How many years did he go through making nothing or making very small amount?
I'll make a reference to Chad Ochocinco, right? He did an interview on ESPN, and for some reason in the interview, he divulged that he had $10 million in a bank account. And when I saw the interview, I messaged him on Instagram. He never got back to me, but I messaged him nonetheless, and I said, Chad, why would you have more than $500,000 in one bank account? Anyone know why I'm asking him that? Because if that bank decides they're going to go out of business, guess how much Chad Ochocinco is going to have left in his bank account? $500,000. The other $9.5 million goes where? Bye-bye, right? It's called FDIC. Yep. So I said, I messaged him. I said, Chad, dude, take your $10 million and spread it across 20 banks. Why? Because now if all the banks go out of business, guess what? Yeah. You're okay, dude. You're going to get refunded.
Yep. And to that younger person, delayed gratification with investment is no different than you trying to be Michael Jordan or you trying to be Tom Brady.
Sure.
Right? And the younger person has to understand that you can still have fun. You can still go out with your friends. Of course. You can still go to movies. You can still do that
Not going to try to change those habits.
But if you have a little bit of sense and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to delay some of my gratification to when I'm older. And any 40-year-old will attest to it that has kids now. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
That it's saving is very hard once the kids come into the picture, once the marriage comes in the picture, the house.
You try to explain that to people, and it's like, man, like, you know, when you do have that kid, daycare costs and educational costs, it's like, oh, dude, you're not going to be able to build this other stuff. Yeah. It's too late. You can't build it, you know? So, you know, and just so you know, the feedback we've been getting has been fantastic from our listeners. I forgot to mention to you that one of our listeners asked us if we could do like kind of a storyboard on our podcast for parts of the show when we do list things out so people can see them and visually recognize, okay, if I have a checklist of stuff, I can see it. Maybe I pause the video and I write down, hey, maybe I should do this, this, and this.
Yeah, and a lot of listeners have gotten back to us that they love the recap.
Oh, the recap's been great.
In a second here because it highlights the points that we wanted to do for there. I mean, there's a lot of other investment basic stuff to go through, and just to touch on a couple, fairly quick, right? One is dollar cost averaging.
Best way to grow.
Basically, what that is consistently putting money away on a regular basis.
$50.
And it's called dollar cost averaging because sometimes you're going to buy a little higher than others. Sometimes you're going to buy a little lower than others, but you're going to get an average to that dollar cost basis, so to speak, in your investment.
Or to reinvest your dividend, right? That's another way you can say dollar cost averaging.
Or to reinvest your dividend, right? Yep. And in context of that, sometimes I'll ask people, can you do $500 a month? And they say, no, I can't do $500 a month. So we start them at $300 a month. But then this time of year, tax time comes around. Mm-hmm. And they get $4,000 or $5,000 back. And I say, hey, do me a favor, send me $2,400.
Finish off your IRA.
They send me $2,400 bucks a month. And then when you do the math, they average $500 a month.
Yep.
Right? So there's some little tricks to the trade with dollar cost averaging and adding in at the right time that can get you above what you think you could technically save.
Right.
You know, and those are important times. Look at those times you get lump sums in. Add extra to investments, take some, pay off a debt, or go and spend it and have some fun with your
here's
family.
The easiest one, right? Paying your mortgage, don't pay monthly, pay every 2 weeks. Why? Because you get 13 payments instead of 12. Yep. And you pay off your loan 5 years earlier.
Yep.
So just good food for thought.
And investment basics is going to get you only so far. You really need to work with a financial professional.
Sure.
And there's a lot of software programs out there that are good, but they don't really take into context your real life situation.
The practice, right? Here's my favorite quote. You go to a doctor's office, right? And there's just the admin staff there checking you in. There's no doctor. What is it?
It's just an office.
It's just an office. But when the doctor shows up, he brings with him his practice, his knowledge, his experience, his time, right? And I feel like that's important for people to understand that are doing it on their own, right? I'm all set. I'm all good. I don't need that extra set of eyes, you know? And sometimes you might be right, but I would say that's a way lower percentage than the sometimes you're wrong. Because most times you're going to be wrong. You're going to make that emotional decision. You're going to make that emotional choice. That's the wrong choice. And if you had somebody in your corner that's like being honest with you, then they're going to go, dude, no, don't make that choice. Wait.
Yep.
See what happens.
And I've said it on shows before. How many times do you do something for the first time and get it 100% right?
It's great point.
Well, you're investing for the first time.
Sure.
You're not going to get it right in most cases. That's why you
want to.
And if you
do, great. If you get it right, awesome.
And that's why you want to work with a team that's got decades of experience 20 some years of experience. We combine in our group 30, 40 years worth of experience, and the key professionals that we bring in, the attorneys, the accountants, things along that line. So hopefully listeners got a lot of educational information today.
Yeah.
We wanted to, I don't like to use the word dumb it down. We wanted to keep it in simplest terms we could, so investors can understand.
There's a lot of angles that we're hitting, man. We're talking about basics and getting your money in. We're talking about education. How do you talk about this stuff? Because I mean, think about it, man. When's the last time you ever said to somebody, "Hey, dude, I don't know. I feel kind of dumb. I don't know." It's not easy to say. That's not an easy thing to admit.
It's easier to say I'm all set.
Right, I'm all set. I'm good. But I feel like that's the catharsis here, is that you have to be willing to say, you know what? I need information. I need it. It's okay. I don't know it. I need it. That's the hardest step.
Yeah.
Once you get that step done, you're free. You're good. Take the shackles off.
So let's recap.
Sure.
Investment, long term in nature. We want to have long term there.
Think for the future.
We want investments that don't act like a seesaw. That aren't all on the same side.
We want balance.
Called correlation, non-correlation. Ownership on stocks, lending on bonds.
Correct.
Right? In the mutual fund space, it's diversified.
Right.
And try to understand what type of mutual funds you're in.
Right.
You don't want
large cap, small cap.
Yeah,
big
you
cap,
don't
right.
want all the same. You don't want all your money in that one space. Understand risk on the bond side.
Yep.
Understand maybe tax-free nature of certain investments on the bond side as well. More is more. Favorite quote from me.
Don't be
more is more. Don't take the lottery approach.
You're right. I like it, man.
Right. Save as much as you can whenever you can.
Yep.
You're not going to get a second chance at it. And then ultimately, dollar cost average. Yep. Always add. Even if there's fear, add. Even if there's no fear,
sometimes
add.
that's the best time to add is when there's fear.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the best time to add. And then honestly, in the last 10 years or 8 years of doing this, that's been the best time. When the market goes down, that's when we go to work.
Yep.
And I've really lived by that mantra. When the market starts to drop, that's when I start getting on the phone. Hey, you got money ready? Because we need it. We need to go in now.
Yeah, you're a little younger, but you got an old car. The old cars used to have an ashtray.
I do. Listen, I will drive in a fast car. I will not drive on a motorcycle. I will not do it.
Majority of the time, what was in an ashtray?
Cigarettes, right?
Nope. Majority. See, this is why you're young.
Oh, that's right.
This
change was in the ashtray.
You kept your change. That's where would tell clients when I came in the business, go down to your car, look in your ashtray. Now's the time to invest.
Yeah, go get the change. Go scoop it out.
Turn your kid upside down, shake him, see what comes out of his pockets.
Did that a lot during lunch. Don't worry, man.
Now's the time to invest. You got to have fun with it. Main point, got to have fun with it.
Sure.
Try to get to your goals, obviously. Saving's not easy. We understand that. Budgeting's not easy. But with some simple terminology we use today, a little bit better understanding, have some confidence and go and invest.
Absolutely.
Find an advisor like the Essley Group to work with and, just have fun with it. So
I'm happy we did it, man. I hope this was educational, and I know that our listeners out there, our shows are long and there's a lot of information. We're going to try to shorten some of the segments and try to dig down on each particular group of people. That'll maybe make it more user-friendly, but at the end of the day, the information we're talking about, it's all part of the process.
Yep.
So if they want to work with us, we're happy to have you. We're really excited and really passionate.
So excellent. And listeners can find us, the Essley Group at Cetera Investors. We're located at 43 British American Boulevard, Latham, New York, 12110. And our 800 number is 800-222-3202. As always, you can go to yourtimeyourmoney.net, and that's .net for your net worth. One of the things we ask you to do is subscribe. If you're on YouTube, if you go on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. It's so important that you get our feeds and share as well. There's tons of people that need education and need confidence with investment. So do us a favor, share if you like it. Also send in some emails as far as other topics you'd like us to cover.
Yeah.
Other questions that you might have, and we'll get
back to you
in
subscribe. Share, like, subscribe.
Excellent. Yep.
Soon enough, we'll be live, and we'll be able to do it right on Facebook Live. I can't wait for that. I'm excited.
Well, good to see you again. Your time.
Your money.
Have a good one.
Signing off.